group called the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission wants to remove the Christina School District from the city of Wilmington and give its students to the Red Clay School District. This would make Red Clay the dominant school district in a city that has been split 4 ways ever since the 1980s. The commission says this move would help create a more unified vision for city education and ultimately improve outcomes. The State Board of Education isn't so sure. Last week, they rejected that plan and asked for revisions. They're expected to take a second vote in mid-March. Our first person segment will discuss the merits of this much debated redistricting plan. Dan Rich is the policy advisor for the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. Welcome, Dr. Rich.
It's a pleasure, Albie.
So let me start here. In your mind, how likely is it that we're going to see a redistricting proposal that goes through the legislature and is approved by the governor this term?
I think it's very likely. I think it's going to move forward. I think the State Board actually did not turn down the proposal. What they did is they didn't act on it. They said, well, we have more questions and we want to get more answers, which is fine. They're exercising due diligence to make sure that what we're doing is serving the best interests of the students. We have the same desire. So I think the reason that this is going to go forward is that there really is now a sense of urgency that something needs to be done. It's been over 60 years since the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, which was very important in Delaware because we had 2 cases that on which that was decided. And despite everything that's happened since, we still have thousands of children in the city of Wilmington. Most of them are black, brown, and poor, who don't have access to high quality education. We know this is a problem. We know this has to change. The consequences of this are not just disastrous for those children and their families, but for the entire community. And I think that the best indicator recently of that is the report from the Center for Disease Control about what this means for the community. So I think that our legislators, I think the governor made it very clear in his State of the State message last week that this is a priority, that he cares, he expects to do something about that. If I go back to the last legislative session, the General Assembly did some things they had never done before. First, they created the commission to improve Wilmington education. The other is that they voted to approve SB 122, a bill that would allow the State Board to approve redistricting. And both of those were approved by strong bipartisan majority. So that makes us very optimistic.
Well, obviously, I think a lot of people agree that there's a problem and improvements can be made. I don't know if everyone agrees on what the solutions should be. You guys have said that sort of a precondition for making things better in the city of Wilmington with regards to education is reducing the number of sort of cooks in the kitchen, reducing the number of districts who have some chunk of the students. Why is that so important? Because I think a lot of people see that as just sort of moving around deck chairs in the Titanic.
Sure. So we have a situation that no one intended, I don't expect, and no one planned. And I don't believe anyone looking at the city would design a public education system the way it is now, but it's evolved over a number of decades. Right now in the city of Wilmington, we have 17 different governing units. There's another 6 just surrounding the city, all of which together share responsibility for the education of about 11,500 students. They do that, they have no plan, they have no shared plan, they rarely collaborate with one another. There are really no requirements for them to coordinate what they're doing. So even when something good happens in one of those schools, it's almost impossible to scale it up to the community as a whole. Every group that's looked at Wilmington education since 2001, and we're the 5th group, has said that you've got to address the issues of governance. You need leadership in the city. We need a locus of initiative in the city, and that's what we're trying to achieve with redistricting.
Well, let me ask though, I mean, right up the road, we have an example of this in Philadelphia. That's a unified school district, right? For a long, long time. They have, in different forms, sort of one voice speaking for all the students in Philadelphia. And yet that district struggles to remain solvent, much less educated students, to adequately. What makes you think that if we had sort of one big tent in Wilmington, or maybe just a couple of big tents in Wilmington, that would make a huge difference?
Well, we're going to have multiple tents in Wilmington no matter what we do. We're not going to have just one big tent, and we're not proposing one big tent. We're proposing a leadership role for one of the districts, and we're also proposing doing away with a configuration of districts that no longer makes any sense. The Christina School District was not the product of any public policy decision in the state. It wasn't produced by referendum, nor were any of the other districts. It was imposed by the courts to achieve a certain kind of outcome, right? And it's one of 4 disconnected school districts in the country out of 14,000. It's disconnected by 18 miles of interstate highway across which we send mostly kids from the city, right, to the suburbs, presumably for their benefit, but no demonstration of benefit. The justification for that district no longer applies. We think the district will be better served and the children will be better served if it concentrates in the western part of the county. It'll still be one of the most diverse school districts in the state, and the Red Clay District would take responsibility for those schools and for those students. When that happens, Avi, the Red Clay School District will be responsible for a majority of the public education students in the city of Wilmington. So it will be the lead district. Now that's just the first piece.
Well,
You've got to also collaborate, right, among that district, other districts, charter schools.
We'll have to get more details later. You can find a lot more on your guys' website, Solutions for Wilmington Schools. Dan Rich, thank you so much for being here. He's the policy advisor for the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. We really thank you for your time. We'll continue to follow this story on the pages of newsworks.org/Delaware.